Local people, important issues. CBS 10 WILM's weekly focus on the Lower Cape Fear region. This is Byline Wilmington with your host, Don Ansell.
Welcome and good morning. Well, we're hearing a lot about the end of the recession and that the economy may be on the rebound today. We're talking with three local experts about how things are looking for us right here in southeastern North Carolina. We kick off our discussion with Dr. Woody Hall. He's senior economist with UNCW. He and his team do a quarterly forecast, right, Woody?
Well, whenever there's something new to talk about,
okay,
we will talk about it.
And we're going to talk about that forecast coming up as well. So Dr. Hall is going to be joining us, or is joining us for our first segment, but stay tuned. We have a powerhouse of guests this morning. April McDavid is president of the Wilmington Regional Association of Realtors, and she will join us in our second segment to talk about real estate and the housing market. And then to cap it all off, Dr. Tom Simpson, who is a former member of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve and now an executive in residence at UNCW, and he'll take a look at the economy in general. A powerhouse of guests this morning on Byline Wilmington. We kick it off with Dr. Hall. Woody, good morning.
Good morning, Don. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for coming.
My pleasure.
And joining us this morning. So let's start off big and sort of narrow it down. How's the economy? How's the local economy?
I think the worst is over.
Yeah?
We had a pretty bad 2008, and it extended into first quarter 2009. But at worst, things have stabilized. We're also seeing some sectors of the local economy that are in the early stages of a rebound. It's not going to be as dramatic.
Sectors like what, like housing?
Housing may have stabilized.
Excuse me.
I'm looking forward to what April has to say, to whether we confirm that or not. But it looks like it bottomed out.
What about retail sales locally?
Retail sales have yet to bottom out, but let's let's put it this way: at least through May or June of 2009. But they're continuing to fall, but they're not falling as rapidly as they were falling in the past.
Okay,
so
we'll talk in a little more detail about retail sales and housing, but you've been quoted as saying that you look at the 3 Ds when judging a recession: depth, duration, and distribution. Give us a little.
Well, hopefully I'm not the only one that looks at those 3 Ds.
Well, tell us how they relate.
Well, the most commonly mentioned criteria or criterion for being in a recession is duration.
How long does it last? I mean, that's what you mean by.
To define a recession, generally, the first thing that's looked at, and not the only thing that's looked at, is for how long has real output, inflation-adjusted output, been declining. And the typical response is if it's declined for 6 months, 2 quarters, we are in a recession.
Okay, so that's duration.
Duration.
What's depth?
How far does it fall?
How bad is it?
How bad does it fall?
And distribution. What
distribution. How widespread is it? Is every part of the country, is every sector of the economy being affected?
And everybody said this is the worst recession since the Great Depression. So all of those were pretty strong.
Well, it's called the Great Recession.
Okay.
And the operational word there now is recession and not depression.
Okay. You will be, and actually Tom as well, Dr. Tom Simpson, will be participating in a UNCW Economic Outlook report, EOC, Economic Outlook Conference. When is that?
It's 2 weeks from yesterday. It's October the 6th. It starts about 7:38 in the morning and concludes by midday. We time it to coincide with fall break on the UNC Wilmington campus, so there's not that much difficulty.
And it's at the Bernie Center?
At the Bernie Center.
And the public's invited?
Public's invited. There is a registration fee. It's fairly nominal. There is a registration cutoff deadline, but that's a little bit flexible.
So if folks get there and they can seat them, they will?
That we're if space available basis, and I think with the Bernie Center we'll have plenty of space for them.
Last October, a year from this economic forecast that's coming up, you anticipated a 2.5% growth for the region. How'd you do?
Well, I got to fall back on one of my favorite philosophers, Yogi Berra.
Okay.
And Yogi, to take some liberties with him, I really didn't say what I said this time last year. I really didn't write what I wrote this time last year. We missed it.
Yeah,
we missed it by a fairly substantial amount.
In general, how accurate have you been with predictions about the local economy?
Well, prior to the current recession, a former faculty member, Claude Farrell, who's now deceased, and we were fairly accurate. We were hitting it about 9 out of 10 times, but we really missed, as did a lot of other people.
All right, so we're coming to the May, June, July, August, September. We're coming to the end of our third quarter. Can you give us any advance on the direction that you think our economy or the state it's in for third quarter, and how we look for that all-important fourth quarter, because retail really depends on that fourth quarter?
Well, in terms of duration, looking at a decline in real output for 6 months, we never really went into recession. We got as close to a recession. Locally? We got as close to one as we possibly can.
I know a lot of folks that might argue
if you look
that
at the aggregate, looking at everything, which means you're not looking at the separate parts, economic activity for all intents and purposes was flat 2008. We saw no growth, we saw no decline. We saw a slight increase, or will have seen a slight increase, but very, very negligible, 2009 of about 1% growth.
Housing declined, retail declined, sales tax revenue declined, and we weren't in recession?
Employment held up. Even though it didn't grow as rapidly as it once did, it held up reasonably well, as did some other sectors of the economy. But again, you know, what's the difference between being flat and declining? For all intents and purposes, very, very minor. We were as close to a recession as we possibly could get.
You know, well, I got you here, Woody, and this is a little bit off track, but I want to get your take on the blotched deal for the Convention Center Hotel and how that might affect the economic picture here. Could it have some effect?
I think long-term, intermediate term, it possibly could, because we were unable to put the package together. And if the package is not complete, it doesn't mean as much as a complete package.
What about the Convention Center in general? Did you support that as a...
Well, I don't know if the word support or not. In all honesty, I have not seen one that breaks even in the traditional sense of the word. But if you look at the ripple effect, it probably does more than break even. If you also look at the fact that a lot of business that might have come here, had we had the facilities, goes somewhere else, it has an impact.
Were you pleased with the tax incentive package for the film industry?
I actually did some work to look at the importance of the film industry in southeastern North Carolina. It does pay fairly good salaries to employees.
And there's a great ripple effect.
There's a great ripple effect. It also tends to be a very footloose industry, in the sense that it will relocate, or can relocate, if there is an increase in real income to the participants in that industry.
One of the huge, we're almost out of time, I'll close with this. One of the big questions and controversies in the region is whether Titan should bring the operation here of the third largest cement plant to Castlehane. Do you have any take on that?
Well, if you look at the economic impact, it can be quite substantial. But again, decisions should not be based solely on economic impact. And I suspect that once this thing is fleshed out, we will have better information on which to make a decision.
Dr. Woody Hall, who is senior economist with UNC Wilmington, joining us for our first segment. Don't go away, folks. We have two more power guests coming up just ahead. April McDavid, president of the Wilmington Regional Association of Realtors, so stay with us.